The details in this content are graphic and are intended to provide information and education. The facts are from police reports, court records, and news reports. Viewer discretion is advised. In 1994, the city of Pittsburgh was plagued with gang violence and a peak number of unalivings among other violent crimes. But this case was different. Some say it was evil and cold-blooded. Some say it was a heat of the moment, and others say it was jealousy. But no matter how you put it into words, it was a tragedy on this particular evening. On a humid summer night on the east side of Pittsburgh in Homewood, July 20th, 1994, a late-night phone call between two neighbors would be the final moments of a young mother and her children. What began as a frightened plea for help would unravel into one of the most horrifying family murders the city had ever seen, and the night that changed everything. At approximately 10 p.m., Beth Ann Anderson called her friend and neighbor Monique Coleman. Her voice was uneasy. She said Gerald's downstairs banging on the door. Beth, using a cordless phone, asked Monique to stay on the line as she went to check. Monique listened as Beth asked, "Who is it?" Then she heard her say, "Gerald." A few seconds later, a man's voice picked up the phone. The tone, the accent, Monique knew it instantly. It was Gerald Watkins, Beth's boyfriend. He called himself G. Then the line went quiet. Moments later, Monique heard Beth gasp, "Ow, stop, Gerald." Then came the sounds of a struggle, followed by Beth's final words, "Call the police." Monique hung up and ran to her friend's home. By the time she reached the porch, police sirens were already cutting through the night air. Responding Officer Talib Ghafour was the first to arrive. As Monique pounded on the front door, officers forced their way inside. The living room was a scene of devastation. Beth Ann Anderson lay motionless on the floor. On the couch nearby, her 18-day-old baby, whose name we'll keep anonymous in this video. Both were unresponsive. Upstairs in the narrow hallway, officers found 9-year-old Charles Kevin Kelly Jr. He'd been shot near the right ear and showed no signs of life. The house had fallen silent, only the hum of police radios breaking the stillness. That same evening, a neighbor named Ronnie Williams told investigators he had seen Gerald Watkins. He'd spotted him standing on Beth's porch, knocking on the front door. Ronnie recognized him immediately, Beth's boyfriend. He turned away briefly to answer his own phone, and when he looked again, police cars had already swarmed the street. The next day, Ronnie identified Watkins in a police photo lineup, and again later in court. Detective Thomas Foley processed the home. The coffee table was overturned, magazines and toys scattered across the carpet. Spent .22 caliber shell casings were everywhere. Some live rounds that hadn't fired. There were casings upstairs, too, near young Kevin's body. All three victims were still warm when police found them, meaning the murders had happened minutes, maybe seconds before officers entered. A young mother, her son, and her newborn child. All gone in an instant. Forensic pathologist Dr. Leon Rosin examined the victims. His findings were chilling. Beth's newborn daughter, only 18 days old, had been shot 12 times. Beth herself had taken 8 bullets to the head and torso. Her 9-year-old son, Kevin, was shot 5 times, each round striking his face, head, and neck. The soot patterns around the wounds told investigators everything these shots were fired at point-blank range. Ballistics expert Dr. Robert Levine confirmed that all the shell casings came from the same gun. A semi-automatic .22 caliber handgun, likely a Tech 22, capable of holding a 30-round clip. Every bullet from the same weapon. That night, before the killings, Watkins was seen at a bar with a friend, Keith Platt. The two men drank until about 9:30 p.m., barely half an hour before Beth made her final phone call. A day or two later, Keith received a call from Watkins. His voice was low, threatening. "You know who this is," he said. "I'm not fucking around. You know what I've done. Shut up and listen." Watkins demanded Keith collect money from people who owed him. When Keith refused, Watkins threatened to harm him and his family. Keith only knew him as G. He didn't even know his full name until after the murders hit the news. For months, Watkins disappeared. Then in May of 1995, almost a year later, FBI Special Agent Robert Bendetson and the New York Fugitive Task Force tracked him down in New York City. He was taken into custody, without incident read his Miranda rights, and agreed to talk. Watkins told agents he'd left Pittsburgh around 7 p.m. that night, driving his grandmother's car to Fort Lee, New Jersey, then taking a bus into New York. He admitted being at Beth's house earlier that day, but denied any argument. When asked about the deaths, Watkins claimed he only knew Beth had been killed and that he had no idea his daughter or Kevin were dead. He even said he'd seen himself featured on America's Most Wanted, but wasn't paying enough attention to realize his baby daughter was gone, and he admitted he never once asked about her well-being. On August 3, 1995, Pittsburgh homicide detectives Logan and McDonald drove to New York to bring Watkins back. At first, the ride was quiet small talk, no mention of the murders. Then, as they neared Somerset, Pennsylvania, Watkins suddenly began talking about that night. Detective Logan stopped him and reminded him of his rights. Watkins said he understood and began to confess. Logan wrote down every word as Watkins spoke. When he finished, Watkins signed the statement. The evidence was overwhelming. Eyewitness accounts, ballistic proof, his own incriminating words. In court, the story came together piece by piece, each detail more devastating than the last. The violence, the motive, the sheer brutality. 3 innocent lives taken. Beth and Anderson, her 9-year-old son Kevin, and her newborn baby girl, whose name we have kept anonymous. The city of Pittsburgh never forgot the horror of that night. By late 1996, after years on the run and a nationwide manhunt, Gerald Watkins finally faced the consequences of his actions inside a Pittsburgh courtroom. On December 9, 1996, the defense filed a motion to suppress Watkins' confession. He claimed that he never spoke with detectives Logan or McDonald during his extradition from New York and that he never signed any statement admitting guilt. But the judge saw through the denial. The court ruled that Watkins' statements were a matter of credibility for the jury, not a constitutional violation. His words would stand. According to Detective Logan's testimony, Gerald Watkins began by saying, "I'm not the monster the media and police made me out to be." He claimed the killings weren't planned, that they were, in his words, something that just happened. Watkins confessed to a toxic storm of jealousy, rage, and despair. He believed Beth Anderson had been seeing another man named Lou, and when she rejected his proposal days before the murders, his emotions boiled over. He told detectives he was also furious with a cousin named Tyrone who had stolen drugs meant for a trip from New York to Pittsburgh. When he vented to Anderson, he said she made him feel like a chump. By July 19th, Watkins was spiraling. He borrowed his grandmother's car, armed himself with a Tech 22 semi-automatic pistol, and drove aimlessly, first toward Harrisburg, then back to Pittsburgh. On the morning of July 20th, he visited relatives to cool off, but his anger never left. That evening, he drove to Beth Anderson's home, unlocked the door with his key, and found her on the phone. Moments later, he opened fire. Watkins told investigators he never picked up the phone during the attack, contradicting witness Monique Coleman's testimony. But his confession grew even darker. Upstairs, 9-year-old Kevin Kelly Jr. stood frozen in the hallway. The boy recognized Gerald, his mother's boyfriend, and grabbed him around the waist, terrified. Watkins admitted he shot Kevin because he knew who I was and what I had just done. When he returned downstairs, he saw his infant daughter, whose name we will keep anonymous, sleeping on the couch. Watkins confessed that he shot her, saying he couldn't raise her and didn't want anyone else to. After the massacre, he tucked the gun into his waistband, walked out of the home pretending nothing had happened, and stopped for gas. He noticed his clip was empty. Then he drove to New York City, tossing the murder weapon into an apartment incinerator before vanishing into the crowd. Gerald Watkins would later stand trial for the execution-style murders of Beth Anderson, her young son Kevin, and his infant daughter. The district attorney would argue that Watkins should die by lethal injection because his deeds constituted a multiple killing in which children were victims. Watkins' public defender is expected to call witnesses to try to convince the jury that Watkins has good qualities. Watkins' public defender said that he wished Watkins had took his advice and not took the stand in his own defense. However, Watkins took the stand against his public defender's advice. While denying responsibility for the murders, Watkins said he hid out in New York City and Harlem and the projects on University Avenue in the Bronx for 8 months after the slayings because he had 3 bodies to worry about in Pittsburgh and needed to raise lawyer fee. Watkins would tell the jury that he did not fire the 25 bullets that killed the 3 victims, and he admitted that he sold drugs to raise money for a private lawyer, but still ended up with a public defender after several lawyers withdrew from his case, not wanting to take part due to the gruesome nature. The jury heard his confession, the ballistics, and the horror of what unfolded that night in July 1994. He was found guilty on all counts. Justice, though delayed, had been served. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before convicting Gerald Keith Watkins on all counts, and would return the next morning to decide whether he should live or die for his convictions. He showed no emotion as the verdict was read, but the jury foreman, a black woman, choked back tears as she announced the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Watkins would immediately appeal his conviction, and the judge would respond by denying his appeal and uphold his sentence. He is currently on death row at SCI Phoenix awaiting a death sentence after exhausting all hopes of appeal. In conclusion, we have included a clip from America's Most Wanted on the case of Gerald Watkins. We have also included a clip of a Pittsburgh police officer and a Pittsburgh FBI agent speaking about Gerald Watkins. And finally, we have spoken to several people who were incarcerated with Gerald Watkins while he was facing trial at the Allegheny County Jail on Unit 7D. While Gerald Watkins was on the run, an attempt was made on his life over a drug dispute in New York. Here is a report from America's Most Wanted of said attempt on Gerald Watkins' life.
On August 6th, Watkins was found, barely conscious, dumped at the side of a highway. A Good Samaritan brought him to the hospital, where he was admitted, suffering from severe head injuries. Before hospital workers realized they were treating an accused triple murderer, Watkins was gone. And he won't be easy to find.
That clip was from America's Most Wanted. Several officers said some things about Gerald Watkins. Here is what one Pittsburgh FBI agent said about Mr. Watkins.
Watkins was known for ripping people off. He would not pay up. He was not trusted, but he was feared. He was an intimidating individual. Watkins is a complete con man. He has the ability, not only with women, but with just about anybody, to win them over to his side when he talks to them. He's intelligent, he's very well spoken, he lies about his educational background, and he can get away with it.
That was what one Pittsburgh FBI agent said about Mr. Watkins. And this is a short summary of the crimes committed by Mr. Watkins in the words of one of the many detectives who processed the scene, investigated and tracked Mr. Watkins, and this video clip was from America's Most Wanted when the detective appeared on the show speaking about the case.
Detective Smokey Hines, a 27-year veteran of the homicide squad, still can't forget the gruesome scene. Amid the baby clothes and toys, they found Beth Ann's body on the living room floor.
She'd been shot numerous times in the upper body and head. The baby was laying on a wraparound sofa behind the mother. The baby was 18 days old. The bullets fired into the baby were all at close range, several to the baby's head, several to the baby's body, to the baby's face, where in fact he may have placed the gun right against the baby's face. How dead is dead.
On the second floor, 9-year-old Kevin was asleep in his bunk bed.
He was able to get up, attempted to run towards his mother's bedroom. He was caught in the hallway here where he was, we feel, executed. Shot numerous times in the head, several times in the upper body, We feel he was trying to get to his mother's bedroom for safety. At that time, his mother was apparently already dead.
That was a summary of the incident at the crime scene for one of the many Pittsburgh police officers who processed the scene and investigated the crime initially and appeared on America's Most Wanted. I have spoken with several people who we will not name upon their request, but they stated that while serving time in the Allegheny County Jail on Unit 70 with Gerald Watkins, they said that Gerald was cool and helped inmates with no money out with hygiene products and other commissary items. They also stated that he liked to gamble playing spades and dominoes, and he made good on all his bets made. They said he was funny and got along with other inmates, and no one ever gave him any problems. He also would have cigarettes that were considered contraband that he shared with other inmates. But one person who was in the Allegheny County Jail with Gerald said that people would call him Baby Killer, but not to his face. For the families of Beth Anderson and her children, no sentence could erase the pain. But their story stands as a chilling reminder of how jealousy, violence, and rage can destroy everything, even the innocent. Thanks for watching another dive into the darkest corners of humanity. Remember, these aren't just stories. They're real people, real lives, and real consequences. Evil doesn't clock out. The world may be full of shadows, but knowledge is our light. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment, and turn on notifications to stay up to date on our latest content here at Crime Depot.